Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. I'm an interviewer, journalist, and broadcaster. And for the first decade of this century, I did for the Irish radio station RTE Radio 1 a music series titled Under the Influence. Sadly, that title was subsequently used, be it stolen consciously or otherwise, for a similar MTV show. So now, after revisiting the master tapes of those old interviews, I've decided to turn the best into a podcast series called The Music That Made Me. I may even add the subtitle, Made Me Want to Make Music. Either way, what follows is one of those shows, minus music, which for copyright reasons I can't include. Some of the full shows and many of my other radio programs are available on mixcloud.com. And if you want to read any articles that arose out of these interviews, you can check out joejacksoninterviewer.com. Enjoy the show.
I'm in your hands.
Okay, I'll give you an idea what the show's called, Under the Influence. It's not a kind of straight bio. Did Sherry tell you what kind of the idea is?
I have no idea.
Okay, it's a summer series I do on specials on every bank holiday out, and I've talked to world musicians about, we play a couple of songs by people that heavily influenced your own music, your lyrics, your style, your attitude, and then we lead into your songs.
All right.
So maybe it's 2 songs along the way from people you would like to hear again.
I'm going to fire up a stogie if that's all right with you.
Which?
Cigar.
Absolutely.
Here we go.
So the structure of the questions also is chronological. Okay? So we'll work through your music from the earliest stuff. I may even play one of the demos from the box set and that kind of stuff.
Sure. Just tell me which ones, because, there was so many. So.
Sure. No, I will try and guide you. And if you don't agree with one of my choices, say, I think another one would be better. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's kind of, a lot of it will be organic.
All right.
Okay, so when?
They'll give us the cue. And we'll do what we do. Are you based in New York here, Joe?
No, we flew in yesterday. I'm flying out in 2 hours.
Oh my God!
I know, isn't that hell?
Thank you so much.
So I don't know what time or day it is. I do know it's America. That's about it, because I can hear your accent.
Yeah, that's it. I'm your only.
There's somebody talking to me around here. Okay, Neil Diamond, welcome to Under the Influence. And before we focus on your music, I'd like to look back on some of the music that influenced you. In high school, you wrote with Jack Packer, What Will I Do?, which you later described as a wannabe Everly Brothers song.
Yeah.
And you once told me that growing up in Brooklyn, you were exposed to singers like Sinatra, then rock, folk, blues, and gospel. So where the hell did we start?
Well, we probably start with my parents. They were both devoted ballroom dancers, so I always had a lot of music around the house. And I was exposed to the Latin music and the foxtrots and tangos and waltzes, but a lot of Latin music. And and I guess we start with the influence of radio when I was a teenager.
Right.
I fell in love with the Everly Brothers and a lot of the pop music at the time. I worked in my dad's little retail shop, so I heard everything that was out in pop music at the time. And but I did fall in love with the Everlys.
Well, can you remember a particular song on Everly Brothers track 3 where you went, God, I got to create music like that? Was there a specific moment?
Well, I think Let It Be Me was one of my faves. It turned me on to Gilbert Bécaud also, who I wrote with years later.
Yeah.
But just on the basis of him writing Let It Be Me, I thought it was a beautiful melody, and the Everlys did a great job on it. But I had all of their singles, Claudette and Bye Bye Love. And,
were they the Cadence recordings of the Warner Brothers? They were
they were Cadence.
The original.
Yeah, the really good stuff.
The monos. They were in mono. They would have been, wouldn't
that's
they?
right.
Late 50s.
That's right. That was before stereo was...
Absolutely, because they re-recorded them in stereo for Warner's. So I think we should play the mono cut of maybe Let It Be Me to kick off. Would you like to hear that?
Oh, that'd be beautiful.
Okay, you got it. Now you know that's the way it goes. Okay, so we'll dub in the song after that. Okay, Neil Diamond, you once said one of your first songs, Blue Destiny, actually touched my 17-year-old heart. And boyhood friends, I believe, called you Hamlet because you seem to be a bit sad. Is that true?
Mm.
Well, had you a Blue Destiny from the start?
Blue Destiny was, I think it was the 5th song I'd ever written, and it was the first forward, total junk. Hear Them Bells was the first one. I wrote it to my girlfriend, and I should have been more careful because she ended up marrying me after that. So I learned the power of songs, but it was a little too late. but Blue Destiny had a little bit of me in it, in the lyric itself, and there was the sadness of it, and there was something about the song that I really liked. For a beginner,
Right.
for just someone starting out, and yeah, that song got me hooked on songwriting.
But do you that element of sadness? I once talked to you about. We talked about how much of it might be rooted in your kind of Jewish background, because I quoted Neil Sedaka saying that a lot of the minor modes he used for writing songs like Solitaire created some of the best songs he did. And you said maybe Neil was right, that maybe there's an element of that in your music too.
I think there's part of it in the music, but I think it's part of my nature anyway. I'm a little bit melancholy. I'm a
Okay.
little bit shy, so that came out.
All right.
But
But were you shy as a kid? Because you then said in the sleeve notes for one of the CDs that you had this image of yourself as a solitary man, but then you
Yeah.
said you were voted the most cheerful boy in the class or something.
Yeah,
So
I
which was it? Which is the truth?
I was very surprised to hear that. I was doing a tour, and when you're touring, you meet people from your past that you
Right.
just never would meet if you hadn't been out there. And there was some kids from my sixth grade class who showed me some things I had written and on the graduation books to them, and I had been voted the most cheerful kid in class. I have no idea
So
where
that blew your
came
image
from.
immediately. Your own self-image was
It's
thrown right out the window.
absolutely. I would have canceled, half the songs I'd written. But so it was a surprise for me to hear that. But I think under the surface there is a little bit of melancholy. But
Which runs throughout your whole career, from the early songs right through to the latest
yeah,
album.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. But I haven't let it get the best of me.
At any
I'm-
period, would it have gotten the best of you? Or were
Pardon
you
me?
always able to discharge it through music?
Yeah, I think it was a good. Music's great therapy.
All right.
It's a lot cheaper than a psychiatrist, and it's good for the soul to vent all of that stuff. And
But you have that. You wrote somewhere that you do have that almost a genetic need to express yourself that way, whether it is through writing the song or performing for an audience, to keep your life in balance.
well, it's turned out that way.
Right.
I'm very lucky that I found music to help me do that.
Okay. Can we play one more influence from the early years, or
Yeah.
would it like to be maybe from the Brill Building days? I don't know. If it was people who were around you.
Brill Building.
It doesn't have to
days.
be. Whatever you want.
Well, the early songs, that one of those original first 5 songs that got me my first job with a music publisher. So it would be anything from Hear Them Bells to A Million Miles Away, or maybe even Blue Destiny.
I think we should play it. We talked a lot about Blue Destiny. Maybe we should let people hear
All
it.
right, let's
Okay.
try it.
This is Blue Destiny from a very young Neil Diamond. Okay. Did you write one of the first Jewish folk rock songs, You Are My Love at Last? I saw that thus described. Is that accurate, or is that romanticism within rock culture?
I don't know who's giving all these description here. It sounds like my mother is
No.
describing these songs, the Jewish rock songs.
Jewish folk rock,
Jewish folk
yeah.
rock. It probably is. It was written in a minor key.
All right.
And I did sing with my fellow schoolmate Jack Packer. He never wrote. I was the writer, and he was actually a trained opera singer. So he taught me how to sing harmonies and
All
all
right.
of that. I was like a sponge. I picked up, musical knowledge from whoever I worked with, and Jack was good. So we sang together, and You Are My Love at Last was the painful expression of two 17-year-old Jewish kids from Brooklyn yearning for a career in music.
All right, okay. But you got it. And you continue that aspect of when you worked with Greenwich and Barry or people in the Brill Building. You did soak up, you took up all those influences about production, about construction, about structuring songs, performance, didn't
very
you?
much
That
so.
was like
And Jeff and Ellie were great teachers. I mean, I remember so well when I wrote Kentucky Woman. I wrote the chorus to impress Jeff, particularly the lyric, Kentucky woman, Kentucky woman, she get to know you, she going to own you. I wrote that for Jeff because I knew he'd really like that line. And at that time, I was trying to impress them.
all right.
They were producing me, and I wanted to make them happy. They were, the talented duo in the business. And when Phil Spector had a dozen Phil-less songs on the charts, Jeff and Ellie had co-written all 12 of them.
All right.
To Do Ron Ron and Be My Baby and all the
Great training ground.
fantastic. So I was very, very lucky to have a chance to work with those two people. And We had a ball.
But they also did a lot of the hand clapping, didn't they? Do the kind of trombone parts in a lot of your songs, and they were very much.
They did all the background
Yeah.
singer parts. So when you say she got the way to
Yeah,
move me, that's Jeff and Ellie. And
Did you sing like Jeff too? So I saw somebody say that his vocal style was something like yours too. That you patterned yourself on him.
no, I don't know
not like
that so
Jeff.
much.
Okay.
But I definitely did write to impress Jeff and Ellie.
Well, was he impressed? Were they impressed?
Well, they loved the song. You know, he jumped up and down when he heard that line. So I think I hit the right nerve.
You did, right. I think we should play that and let people hear what hit his nerve.
Good.
Should we play it?
Absolutely.
Okay. This is going its own direction, but that's okay by me.
Beautiful.
Yeah, just Neil Diamond, we touched on your childhood there, and you did mention your parents. Was there any echoes of the kind of tensions that were in the jazz singer? Was there any element that you felt by singing pop, your dad felt let down? Did he want you to do that? Were there tensions between you and your dad along those lines, or was that just an external movie?
No, I think it was written really for the movie, and it's the story from the 30s.
The original
you
movie.
know,
Yeah.
pretty much so. My parents were really supportive, although
right.
I must say they're probably underneath all of that support, and I think they would have preferred that I go to medical school and do something
Worthwhile.
worthwhile with my life.
Saving souls didn't saving bodies was probably better for them than saving souls.
Absolutely, but they were so musical that
Right.
they loved the idea,
All right.
and I would come home and from making these early demos, and after playing them myself in that turntable that I had downstairs, I'd have my mom and dad come down and listen to them, and they were my biggest supporters
Were
at
they?
the beginning.
All right.
Absolutely.
But there are many images in many of your songs, like about a lonely child looking out a window. And you have spoken about always dreaming there was something more, or dreaming of being rich, or dreaming of getting out of where you were. What was that kind of longing? If you were as seemingly content within that situation, why did you have that other aspiration?
I don't know if I was content, but I was, I was basically a good kid. I never really got into too much trouble, and there was a lot of trouble around in Brooklyn that you could get into.
What kind of trouble did you get into? What was it? Are we talking gang fights? Are we talking tough stuff here?
couple of gang things, but I learned real easy that was not my milieu. I was shot beneath my eye with an air gun.
All right.
In one of those fights, and it came too close to my eye, and I said, this is not what I should be doing. And my dad knew that there was that kind of stuff around, so he made me come
Around
and work
the neighborhood.
around the neighborhood. There
Right.
were gangs, and
All right.
so he made me come after school and work in his shop.
Yeah.
So that kept me out of trouble immediately.
But there is that loneliness in a lot of those songs about childhood, sitting by the window.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
I think I've
Like
always
even that
been
beautiful lyric about waiting for your father to come home and the feel of his whiskers and wondering where he's gone. They're very evocative, but aching images.
I think, Brooklyn Roads really
Yeah.
told that story of growing up in a Flatbush section of Brooklyn, which is a working man's section, and it was also a tough section. And I was pretty much of a loner
Right.
at that point in my life.
But you'd wait for
that
the-
image of myself sitting by the window and looking down on those Brooklyn roads, it was actually Church Avenue.
Right.
And it's very right on.
Okay, and so is Shiloh. You create an imaginary friend. I mean, that's like a lonely guy or woman,
Yeah,
whatever. Creating a friend who helps
that
you
would,
dream.
That would take a therapist to really get to that, because that's
Right.
a little bit off the mark. Brooklyn Roads is right on the mark.
Okay, Shiloh was more of an artistic creation.
I think so. I took
Right.
my poetic license. I had
Okay.
started paying off my poetic
Had you?
license that year, and
So you could play around with the facts.
exactly. So it wasn't an imaginary friend, but in fact, I've just come to know after all of these years that imaginary friend was music,
Oh, right, okay.
and I would come to music whenever I needed,
Right. Solace.
and sustenance. and-
Okay, all right. Well, then I'm not going to play Shiloh. I'm going to play Brooklyn Roads. I'd love to
Beautiful.
hear that again. It's a gorgeous song. Neil Diamond's Brooklyn Roads. Okay, this is lovely. Okay. Neil, you were talking there about when you got shot with the air gun or the pellet gun under the eye.
Yeah.
When you then, I think it's ironic then that you went and signed for a label called Bang, which I have read in early press releases and that you beat the mob. How much of that is, again, romanticization or playing with the facts? Burt Burns and co.
Bert was a very creative guy. He wrote Twist and Shout, and a number of other songs. He
All
was
right.
a very creative guy, but to start a tiny label like that, I think they had to have some kind of backing.
Okay.
And, whether it was kosher or not, I really can't say. I kind of think not. I think there were some guys with broken noses who
All right.
were helping get the records played, and I remember very clearly they were counterfeiting singles in New Jersey, my singles when they first started to hit, and Bert sent some guys out there to break some legs and
Okay.
stop that illegal
Okay.
activity with some more illegal activity.
Yeah, right.
But that's
but that's how the business was. A lot of the
that's
business was in New York, particularly at that time, and it goes back
exactly.
to Sinatra, it goes back to Como, and all those people.
Exactly.
So you would have bought into that. But was it ever a stage where it got dangerous for you? I have read that you at one point began packing a 38, and you sent your wife and child out of the city.
I did.
Yeah.
When I left Bang Records, we just after a couple of years, and they wanted me to continue doing Cherry Cherry and Kentucky Woman, and I wanted to. The Beatles were there, and they were showing everybody that you could really, spread your wings, and I wanted to do that. I felt I had been on the road for a couple of years and doing all the commercial records, and I didn't want to do that anymore. I wanted to do commercial records and make people happy and write beautiful songs, but I wanted just to be a little more creative and
You wanted to use your poetic license further.
absolutely. I had been paying for it for a couple of years at that point, but the record company was not happy with
Okay.
that, so we locked horns, and I finally said, "That's it, I'm gone, and do what you will, but I'm out of here."
All right.
And so I started to get threats. There were veiled and unveiled threats. I got calls from people I know saying the FBI has word that the Mafia is coming after you and threatening you, et cetera, et cetera. So be careful.
All right.
So I packed the 38 for a while. I sent my wife and my daughter out to a little house we had on Long Island, and I walked the streets with a very heavy gun,
Okay.
and it was loaded too. I don't know what I would have done with it.
The occasion never arose where you had
The
to kind of.
occasion never arose, although everybody around me was threatened too. Jeff and Ellie were threatened. My manager, who was Fred Weintraub,
He was beat up, was he?
at the time, owned the bitter end, and they threw a stink bomb in the bitter end and closed it down for 3 months.
All right.
But somehow we all got through it and survived, and
right.
the bad guys ran away when the good guys, came to the rescue. That
All
was,
right. Was there ever a stage, because you're talking to people in Ireland, that Bert was associated with Van Morrison, that you were told he could kind of boost his career and stagnate yours? Because he had an
Well-
interest in both you guys around the same time.
That's right. Bert brought Van on, and he was obviously a tremendously talented guy, and I was happy to have him on as a label mate. Up until then, I'd been supporting everybody, but it made Bert a little more independent of me. Here he had this new guy who was going to take over, and I don't know if Van knew anything about this. Probably not, but the pressure was turned up on me because
Right.
of that.
Okay, all right. So you said you wanted to get out of Bang because you wanted to do more mature, more your own different style of music. So can we pick a song from that era that you say, now this is where I really began to artistically spread my wings?
Well, Brooklyn Roads and Shiloh
They're of that
were,
time.
were
They were of that time.
absolutely. They were
Okay.
not what Bang
Right.
considered to be, my kind of song. They were not Cherry Cherry or
Right.
Kentucky Woman or even Solitary Man. They went off in a different tangent. They became personal,
Right.
and the record company didn't want that.
Okay. So what about where does and the grass don't pay no mind is around that era, isn't it?
That's right.
Would that have been one of the more mature? That's a very lyrical.
Absolutely. The Grass Won't Pay Me No Mind never could have been written on Bang Records. They
Okay.
would have,
It's a staggering lyric.
squelched it.
I mean, you say it was that was just almost like a stream of consciousness as opposed to relating an experience you had with a young woman by a stream in the grass or whatever.
Absolutely.
You're going to say that anyway, aren't you?
No, that's absolutely what it was. It was
Stream of consciousness.
a stream of consciousness, a wish, a desire,
Right,
a dream, just an image that I had in my mind. And
It's a very beautiful lyric, very
Thank you.
poetic lyric. And if you don't mind, I would like to play that.
I'd love to hear it again.
Okay, and The Grass Don't Pay No Mind. It's one of my favorite songs of yours.
Thank you.
It kind of was the soundtrack to a similar experience for me. So
Uh-oh.
you can't get too central, more central to a person's life than that. Okay. Okay, Neil, we're coming out of And the Grass Don't Pay No Mind. I want to talk about you launched yourself as a writer to it when you got involved with the Monkees. But just on that And the Grass Don't Pay No Mind, is it true that kind of Presley did record that around 69 in the Memphis sessions? When he first made it, he went back to Memphis for the first time in years. And I heard that you were booked to do the Memphis studios, and Chips Moman said, we want it for Presley. And you apparently said, or your people said, that's okay, I'll give up the week if Presley will cover one of my songs. And Presley apparently picked On the Grass Don't Pay No Mind.
It's a great story, and it may be true. It's the first I've heard of it. It's the first I've.
But you would have heard his version from the Memphis sessions.
Yes, you know, anything that Elvis did, you had to listen to. He was the guy who started it all.
All right.
So
does that feel good to you as a songwriter? Chris Christopherson said to me once that when he heard Sinatra and Presley, voices like that wrap themselves around his lyrics, his melody, you just feel, God, this is it.
No, absolutely. I mean, Sinatra recorded a few of my songs, but he
does a beautiful version of Dry Your Eyes.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know.
You know that either. Here I'm teaching Neil Diamond all
My
about his own
goodness.
recordings. Fabulous version.
I think he did probably the best cover version ever of Sweet Caroline. He did it with a swing big band orchestra, and I just fell in love with it all over again.
All right, okay. So let's backtrack to the cover with the Monkees thing. That was kind of like you did I'm a Believer, and that showed people you were not just performing, you could write these great songs, and it was a huge hit with Don Kirshner. Of course, you got involved at that level.
Exactly, but I was just beginning to have hits myself. Cherry Cherry was out, and that's really what attracted Don. He loved Cherry Cherry, and he called Jeff Barry and said, hey, you know, why don't you get the kid over here, and maybe we can put some things together for the Monkees. And I didn't write anything special for them, but I played them some things we had on an upcoming album. And I said, you can pick anything you want, you know, because I was a writer and I wanted to have some hit songs out there.
And you wanted to pay the rent too. That was the time when you were struggling to pay your rent.
Absolutely. And the Monkees paid my rent for years with that, because I never got paid from my label. But as a writer,
was that part of the problem with Bang too? You weren't getting that kind of royalties, publishing royalties? Oh,
That's
right,
right.
okay. That's a big issue. Huge
well,
issue.
you know, if you're working for a year or two and you're hoping to pay for your expenses and all of that kind of stuff, it helps to get paid. And there was no money forthcoming.
All right, but it came in on the Monkees' I'm a Believer.
It came in on the Monkees' I'm a Believer. I got the biggest check I ever received, and I promptly went and hid it somewhere in my room, and I didn't find it again for about 7 or 8 months. I was going nuts. I hid it in a very secret place where nobody could find it, and I couldn't find it. And I couldn't pay my rent either.
You put it with your 38. You'd stopped using it.
God.
But is it true then that when Kirshner said to you, you know, they'll do I'm a Believer and you get the second one if it's a hit, and that they then didn't want to do A Little Bit Me, but he said, look, I promised Neil Diamond he'd have the follow-up too.
He never promised me anything.
Oh, did he not?
And, you know, I was very pleased to get the follow-up, but I would have been just as happy just to have I'm a Believer.
All right.
But there were no promises.
All right. I'd love to play, if you don't mind, your own version of I'm a Believer to let people hear what they heard and where it started.
Yeah, for sure. They heard it. Don heard it. He loved it.
Would you still be proud of this lyric? Obviously has resonance still for a lot of people.
Absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
The faith of a romantic.
Always.
Okay. I'm a Believer. Okay, this is going well. Can we take a little break? I just want to take a drink of water. You okay with this?
Beautiful.
We're going through the... So you didn't know that story about Dry Your Eyes? Sinatra's a staggering version.
No, I'll have to get a copy of the record. I know he did Stargazer.
Funny version, a very swing version of that too, didn't he? That was a great version of Stargazer.
Yeah.
But Dry Your Eyes is really moving, very powerful. It was recorded the same session.
I'm going to have to get it
And it's
now.
on some reprise compilation box set as an outtake.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Sherry, make sure I get a copy of that, okay?
Yeah, it's on the reprise collection.
Good.
But you got to buy a big, huge CD box set.
That's all right.
Hi, Joe Jackson here again. Thank you for listening to this edition of the Joe Jackson Interviews podcast. More can be heard, as I said, at joejacksoninterviewer.com.